The latest updates surrounding the upcoming draft have started to generate a lot of discussion among Dallas Cowboys fans. And as the big event gets closer, the conversations only get louder. With the team holding 2 first-round picks, expectations are naturally higher, and the front office will be under pressure to make the right decisions that can immediately improve the roster while also building for the future. Draft season always brings debates, predictions, and surprises, and this year feels no different, especially when looking at the latest big board rankings and trying to figure out which prospects could realistically end up wearing a Cowboys uniform next season. Looking at the top of the board, there are a few names that are almost certainly going to be gone before the Cowboys even get close to making their first selection. Some of these prospects are considered elite talents, players who can change a franchise from day one. And because of that, it would take something very unexpected for them to slide down the board. Still, every year the draft brings at least one surprise, and teams that stay patient sometimes end up benefiting from unexpected situations. That is why fans and analysts keep looking at different scenarios, because even if a player is projected to go very early, there is always a small chance that the board falls in a strange way and creates an opportunity. One of the biggest discussions right now revolves around defensive prospects, because that is where many people believe the Cowboys could focus early in the draft. The defense has shown flashes of being dominant, but consistency and depth remain important concerns, especially when facing high-powered offenses. Adding a versatile defender, someone who can play multiple roles and adapt to different schemes, could completely change the way this defense performs. That is why certain linebackers, edge rushers, and defensive backs are being talked about so much in connection with Dallas, because the fit makes sense both in terms of need and overall talent value. There's also the possibility that the Cowboys look at the best player available strategy instead of drafting strictly for need. This approach has worked for many successful teams in the past, because passing on elite talent just to fill a specific position can sometimes be a mistake. If a top-tier player unexpectedly falls to their pick, the Cowboys might decide that talent is more important than immediate roster gaps. This is especially true in the first round, where the goal is usually to secure impact players rather than depth pieces. With 2 first-round selections, the team has flexibility, and that flexibility could allow them to take risks or capitalize on unexpected opportunities. Another interesting part of this draft class is the number of offensive players who could go early, which would actually benefit Dallas if their main focus is defense. If quarterbacks, wide receivers, and offensive linemen start coming off the board quickly, that means defensive talent will start sliding further than expected. This is exactly the type of scenario that teams hope for during the draft, because it allows them to land players who normally would not be available at their draft position. Fans should definitely keep an eye on how the first several picks unfold, because the early selections often determine the entire direction of the first round. There are also some players who are considered wild cards in this draft class, prospects with huge talent, but also question marks related to injuries, limited playing time, or inconsistent performances. These players can be risky selections, but they can also become some of the biggest steals in the draft if everything works out. Teams with multiple early picks are usually more willing to take these kinds of risks, because they have more chances to hit on a star player. The Cowboys could find themselves in that exact situation, especially if they feel confident in their scouting and medical evaluations. When looking at potential fits for Dallas, versatility keeps coming up as a key factor. Modern defenses require players who can cover, tackle, rush the passer, and adjust to different formations without becoming a liability. Players who can only do one thing, well, sometimes struggle to stay on the field in important situations. That is why the scouting department will likely prioritize football intelligence, athletic ability, and positional flexibility when evaluating prospects. The goal is not just to draft good players, but to draft players who fit the system and can contribute immediately. As the draft gets closer, rumors, mock drafts, and rankings will continue to change, and some players will rise while others fall. This always happens after combines, pro days, interviews, and team evaluations. A player who is not being talked about much right now could suddenly become a first-round pick, while another highly ranked prospect could slide due to concerns that are not public yet. This unpredictability is what makes the draft so fascinating every year. Because no matter how much analysis is done, there are always surprises once the actual selections begin. For the Cowboys, the most important thing will be maximizing the value of their 2 first-round picks. If they can walk away with 2 players who become starters or impact contributors early in their careers, this draft could be seen as a major success. Building through the draft has always been one of the most effective ways to create long-term success in the league, and teams that draft well consistently stay competitive. That is why so much attention is being placed on these upcoming selections, because they could play a big role in shaping the future of the team for the next several seasons. As the conversation continues around the draft, another important factor to consider is how the board might fall between the Cowboys' 2 first-round selections. Having 2 picks in the same round creates a very interesting strategic situation because the team can approach the draft in multiple ways. They could focus on defense with the first pick and then target offense with the second, or they could double down on one side of the ball if the value is too good to ignore. This flexibility is something many teams wish they had, and it gives Dallas a real opportunity to improve the roster in a significant way in just one night. One scenario that continues to be discussed is the possibility of a defensive lineman or edge rusher becoming available when the Cowboys are on the clock. Pass rushers are always valuable in the league because pressure on the quarterback can completely change the outcome of games. Even teams that already have good pass rushers are always looking to add more depth and talent at that position. If Dallas can add another player who consistently pressures the quarterback, it would make the entire defense more dangerous and help the secondary as well, since quarterbacks would have less time to throw. The secondary is another area that could receive attention depending on how the draft unfolds. Modern offenses rely heavily on passing, which means defenses need more players who can cover receivers in space and also tackle effectively in open field situations. A defensive back who can play multiple roles, such as outside corner, nickel corner, or safety, would be extremely valuable because it would allow the defense to disguise coverages and adjust to different offensive formations without substituting players. That kind of versatility is something coaches love because it creates more options and unpredictability. There is also the possibility that the Cowboys look at offensive line depth at some point in the first round, especially if a highly rated lineman falls further than expected. Games are often won in the trenches, and having a strong offensive line not only protects a quarterback but also improves the running game. Even if the line looks solid right now, injuries happen every season, and having young talent developing behind starters is always a smart long-term strategy. Drafting an offensive lineman may not be the most exciting pick for fans, but it is often one of the most important moves a team can make. Another thing that makes this draft interesting is that some prospects have very wide ranges in terms of where they might be selected. Some teams may see a player as a top 10 talent, while others may see that same player as a late first-round prospect. These differences in evaluation are what create surprises during the draft. A player could slide much further than expected simply because the teams picking earlier have different needs or different opinions on that player's potential. When that happens, teams picking later in the round can end up getting incredible value. Trades are always another possibility during the first round, and having 2 picks gives Dallas more options if they decide to move up or move down. If there is a specific player the team really wants, they might consider trading up a few spots to secure him. On the other hand, if the board is not falling in a favorable way, they could trade down and collect additional picks while still selecting a good player later. Draft strategy is often about patience and timing, and teams that manage their picks will usually come out of the draft in a strong position. As the draft gets closer, the discussions among fans will continue to grow, especially when it comes to dream picks and realistic targets. Every fan has a favorite prospect, someone they believe would be a perfect fit for the team. These debates are part of what makes draft season so exciting, because everyone has a different opinion and a different vision for how the team should build its roster. Some people want the team to focus entirely on defense, while others believe adding more offensive weapons should be the priority. No matter what direction the Cowboys decide to go, the most important thing will be finding players who can contribute early and grow into bigger roles over time. The first round is where teams expect to find starters, impact players, and future leaders. If Dallas can hit on both of their first-round selections, this draft could become a turning point for the team. With the right choices, the roster could become deeper, more balanced, and more competitive against the top teams in the league. The pressure will definitely be there on draft night, but this is also a huge opportunity. 2 first-round picks do not come around very often, and when a team has that kind of draft capital, they need to make it count. The decisions made during this draft could shape the direction of the franchise for several years, and that is why the anticipation continues to build as the draft gets closer and closer. Fans, analysts, and the organization itself all know how important this moment is, and now it is just a matter of waiting to see how the board falls and which players end up becoming the newest members of the Dallas Cowboys. Another factor that could influence the Cowboys' decisions in the first round is how other teams ahead of them address their own needs. The draft is always unpredictable because one unexpected pick can completely change the next 10 selections. If a team reaches for a quarterback earlier than expected, it pushes another player down the board. If a run on offensive linemen suddenly happens, defensive players start to slide. This chain reaction is something front offices prepare for with multiple draft scenarios, because being ready for different outcomes is essential when the clock is ticking and decisions must be made quickly. The Cowboys front office will also be thinking not only about immediate starters, but about long-term roster construction. Some players may not start right away, but could become key contributors in 1 or 2 seasons. Teams that consistently compete usually draft with both the present and the future in mind, balancing immediate needs with long-term development. That is why sometimes a pick that does not seem obvious at first ends up making a lot of sense later, once the roster evolves and contracts, injuries, and player development change the team's needs. Coaching philosophy will also play a big role in which players the Cowboys target. Different defensive and offensive schemes require different types of players, and not every talented college player fits every system. Coaches often look for specific traits, such as speed, strength, awareness, or positional versatility, depending on how they want their units to play. This means that the best player on the board is not always the best player for a specific team. Fit matters a lot in the draft, and teams that draft players who fit their system usually have better results than teams that simply draft based on rankings alone. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are beginning to swirl deep in Dallas Cowboys circles, and they carry the unmistakable tone of something bold, something nostalgic, perhaps even something mythic. According to emerging speculation, Jerry Jones has quietly opened internal discussions about a potential reunion-style move, bringing veteran defensive force Calais Campbell to Dallas. Around the league, Campbell's name still commands respect. His presence alone evokes durability, leadership, and a relentless motor that refuses to fade with time. While many franchises look exclusively toward youth, the Cowboys may be entertaining a different philosophy, one that blends experience with ambition. The idea of Campbell anchoring or reinforcing the defensive front is not just practical. It feels symbolic, like the return of a battle-tested warrior to a team chasing legacy. Sources close to the situation suggest these talks are far from formal negotiations, but the mere fact they exist has sparked intrigue. Jones has never shied away from headline-making decisions, and this potential move fits his pattern of mixing calculated risk with star power. Campbell, despite his veteran status, has continued to demonstrate flashes of dominance that defy conventional expectations about longevity in the league. Inside locker rooms and among analysts, the conversation has already shifted from why to what if. What if Campbell's leadership becomes the missing piece in Dallas' defensive identity? What if his experience elevates younger players in high-pressure moments? These are the kinds of questions that fuel rumors into something larger, something that captures the imagination of a fan base eager for a defining chapter. For now, nothing is confirmed. No signatures, no official offers, just the quiet hum of possibility. But in the world of professional football, that's often how the biggest stories begin. Not with certainty, but with a whisper that refuses to go away. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.